Today we will be covering concept 2.3, carbohydrates consist of sugar molecules, from Principles of Life, second edition by Hillis et al. Now, this will be pages 27 through 29 in your textbook. When we think of carbohydrates, this is commonly what we refer to as sugars. Okay, they are a source of stored energy within the body. They allow for transport of stored energy within organisms. That's not only animals, but plants, bacteria as well. They're also structural molecules, and they allow for signaling to occur between different cells, and they can help trigger specific biological responses. Now, when we look at sugars in their most simplistic form, we are referring to monosaccharides. The pentoses are 5 carbon sugars. The two primary ones we think about are deoxyribose and ribose, RNA and DNA. Certainly, you recall what each of these are from previous biology courses. We also have our hexoses, C6H12O6, commonly called glucose, fructose, mannose, and galactose. And then, of course, all of the other complex sugars when we begin combining these together. So when we look at a monosaccharide here, we have ribose and deoxyribose. This is figure 2.9 on page 27 in your text. And while they both have 5 carbons, you can see that structurally they are different. Okay, with ribose, we have an OH here, and deoxyribose, we have a single H. Because of this, it gives them very different chemical properties, therefore very different biological roles. This does aid in the formation of a double-stranded structure with deoxyribose versus single-stranded with ribose forming RNA. Okay, our six carbon sugars, our hexoses, we can see here, are mannose, galactose, glucose, and fructose. Okay, so you can see that fructose being the different one here, having a more of a pentose shape, but still having 6 carbons, right here. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 being present. We combine these to form larger polysaccharides. Now, when we begin joining our carbohydrates together, this is done through what is called a glycosidic linkage to form a disaccharide, then trisaccharide, so forth and so on until we can reach our large complex carbohydrates. Now, oligosaccharides contain several monosaccharides. We often find them helping to communicate from one cell to another. We find them embedded within the phospholipid bilayer of the cell, bonded to proteins. They aid greatly in cell signaling, and we find them in our human blood groups, the ABO blood typing, from oligosaccharide chains. So polysaccharides are these large chains of monomers. These monosaccharides linked together. We typically put them into 2 groups: our starches, which will be long chain-like polymers of glucose, and then glycogen, which is a highly branched polymer of glucose. This is the main energy storage molecule in mammals for short-term energy usage. Now, because it is highly branched, it allows for a relatively large amount of energy to be released in a relatively short amount of time. Okay, so looking at figure 2-10 on page 28 in your text, you can see how our cellulose is structured through these glycosidic linkages, bringing these long chains together. We see it similarly in glycogen, only in this case we have more of these secondary linkages branching out from our primary chain. Okay, so again, you can see this, our branched starch compared to glycogen. You can see it being much more branched. And again, this is done in an attempt to help release energy more quickly. Okay, so let's go back to cellulose for a second. Now, it is the most abundant carbon-containing biological compound on Earth. It's a very stable, good structural material. We find this in plants. It's the main component of the cell wall. It is also indigestible. Now, the easiest way to examine cellulose is if you've ever eaten celery. So these strings that are in celery, that is actually cellulose. Now, cellulose is incredibly strong. It is what makes up fiber. So when you buy an actual rope, or even the fiber that is in your clothing, the cotton that's in your clothing, that is cellulose. Okay, so we can see this linear cellulose right here, these long parallel running chains. okay, allow them to be very, very, very tough. If you have any questions, make sure to put them in the comments below, and we will discuss them in class.